As DMs, if your characters end up with like sentient weapons in their backstory, do you choose their personalities for them, or do you let them kind of like help that process? Or how do you guys handle that?
I don't let them choose a sentient weapon in their backstory.
No, but I mean, like if they have like I had a sentient weapon in my backstory.
You had a weapon that was housing the soul of your father, and I
That's
didn't.
fair.
Yeah, I didn't see a problem with you being able to communicate with someone who's a little bit wiser, because at that point I could just take on. You said, we get along. It's a good relationship. I'm like, I can take a fatherly tone to give advice when she starts to fuck up. It's a
Yeah.
whole lot different than a sword that goes fucking kill it, right? So
That's fair.
Was
That's fair.
was it a sword or a bowling ball?
no, it was not from Mystery Men.
Okay.
Deep cut, and I like the reference,
I
but
didn't get the reference at first. I was like, why would it be a bowling ball? It's like, what? I was like, do you have some dad trauma that you need to unpack that's about this bowling ball right now? Because, like, we can do that, like, if you need it. Like, this is a therapizing group of people. Like, we do that here.
I'm sorry, it was just so open there. I couldn't help it. It's so good.
Mm.
it's funny. My go-to bowling ball reference is usually something to do with the Big Lebowski or Kingpin or even the Flintstones. But for some reason, I'm tired enough that my brain went to Mystery Men.
KO.
I I have no problem as a story progresses to give sentient items to my party. I will begin by telling them this is the general personality of them, and then I let them develop it from there.
Mm.
So I
With
give
their
them
interactions, yeah.
exactly. I even let them, if I believe they are strong enough role players, I will let them role play their sentient weapons. It kind of
No.
gives them like a second character that they can play.
Oh, I don't go that far. I will have to be the other voice to balance them out, but that's usually because I try to give it as weird as possible. Dan, for example, right now his character has a magical item that's sentient, but it's a quill that writes in a book, and his name is Vane, and it just has like never-ending ink coming out of the end of this quill. But Vane has the personality of an 8-year-old girl and has never actually witnessed the world around her and only understands it through communication by writing within the book. So
Hmm.
whatever Dan's character writes in the book, Vane will then understand, but has no concept of what colors are or shapes until you draw the shape within the book, and then she will start to understand. So that's his character. I'm not gonna make Dan role play that at the table. That's
Yeah.
two balls to the wall.
Oh no, yeah, absolutely. Like,
That's really cool.
You got to answer the question too, Megan.
So
Don't just sit there
sorry, I
quietly.
spaced out just right there. I was just like, I'm gonna take a small like micro nap right now. Thanks, guys. No, fun again, like to both of your points, I would not have a sentient weapon until later in the campaign, or if we're starting at a higher level. Like, especially if you just look at the how magic items, we've talked about this in other episodes of what level you should be when you get certain items. Sentient weapons tend to be wondrous items. So you won't get them until later in the campaign. But I like the idea of having that sit down with your player and being just like, okay, well, this is the kind of weapon it is. What kind of person? Let's roll these character traits together. Like, I don't mind having that like story building opportunity with them, depending on the weapon. Some weapons have like inputted backstories on how they operate. But if it's a sentient weapon that you've kind of built together because of something that's happened in the game, I would love to have that sit down with my player to be like, okay, let's build this together. Like,
So, okay, total sidebar here. Before we get this episode going, two things that just occurred to me. One was back in 3.5, I sat at a table where one of the players played only the sentient weapon of another player.
that's actually really cool.
It was really cool because she couldn't be there for every single session that we played in.
Yeah.
So the DM
That's a
took
good way
over
of doing
unless
it.
she was sitting at the table, or there would be like texting really quickly. What would your character say in this scenario, right? And then like
Yeah.
reading that out loud, or getting her to leave little. We had a little tape recorder, and she had a bunch of like pre-recorded quotes on it and shit. So that was a lot of fun. The other thing, and this is a spoiler alert for our campaign, what Dan doesn't realize, and what Charlie doesn't realize, is that Charlie's character, who is bound to Dan's character, has died. And there's a little soul light that kind of follows Dan's character around. Only he can see Charlie's dead character.
Yeah.
Charlie's playing a new character now, and his dead character has wandered away. We don't know where he is right now.
Mhm.
He also currently has a sword that used to have a soul in it and currently doesn't. And the big mystery is, well, what happened to the soul that was in it? And nobody's thinking about, we have this empty vessel. Spoiler alert, I am going to put Charlie's dead character's soul within the sword, and the dead character's name is Fang, which is a badass name for a fucking sword.
Yeah.
Pretty
So
cool.
that's around the corner. Like within
Where did my dad's voice go, Adam?
show up to more sessions, Megan.
How dare you?
Oh,
Stop having a busy life on Sundays.
It's my tattoo day. I don't know what you want from me. Oh Lord. Also, all I could think about when you mentioned that you had pre-recordings on like a little recorder, so all I could think about was a yak back, and like
That's a oh my god, that's a flashback. Oh my god.
and all I want to get is a yak back for D&D for my sentient items. I wonder if
Brilliant.
you can get them in bulk on Amazon at this point.
Yeah, probably like 95 cents a piece.
Yeah.
Welcome to the It's a Mimic podcast, where you never know what you're going to get.
Welcome back to It's a Mimic, where you never know what you're going to get. Today we're continuing our discussion on Dungeon Master tips in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. I'm Adam, and with me today are Megan and Tyler, and this episode is called Magic Items. Even more things to make even more magic things even more magical. I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but that title just keeps getting longer and longer for the last 3 episodes.
Yeah. I don't have to say it, so I don't really care. In this episode of the It's a Mimic podcast, we're going to cover part 3 of our discussion on magical items and what to do when they become a centralized part of your game.
Before we get into the magical items from the DMG, though, I want to ask you guys, besides the deck of many things, what's the most game-breaking item you've seen in your games?
Let's roll initiative.
Yeah.
12.
6.
17.
Well, Tyler, talk to yourself for a minute then.
I'm talking to myself. The most game-breaking item I think I've seen in our campaigns was a sentient item that I gave to one of our players, and it was called Apollo's Lute. He was a bard, and I gave each one of them a sentient item that kind of plays to them, but I made this thing way overpowered than it really should have been. And so much so is by the end, it was the sentient items leveled up with them, and so by the end it had a +5 spell casting modifier, and he was able to cast guardians twice a day, and it had various other stats that went with it as well. And it was just so overpowered because he was already a ridiculously powerful bard, and so by level 20 his spell save DC was something like, I think, 24 or 25 with everything else that he stacked on top of it. And I was just like, it was for me a game-breaking thing because I could never I could never get away from any of his spells that he would cast because it was such a ridiculous high DC that I'd be rolling against whenever he would cast a spell, or if it was something that he had to roll saves on, he had just ridiculous amounts. So it was pretty game breaking by the end of it. But you know what? They were a level 3 to level 20, so fine. By the end, have this incredible magical thing. But it was pretty game breaking. It was pretty hard to get around. Especially when you used hold person consistently.
Interesting.
Yeah, there are some things that are out there that are just, even if it's just a spell, it's too powerful to give to a player for long-term use without, a hefty resource cost, right? Something like a single 9th level spell slot, right? Or very, very expensive material components.
Yeah.
One of the things that I tend to look at is, I like to give out, and I talked about this in the last episode on magic items, consumable items, so that it's really, really powerful, but you get it once and then it blows up, or the charges are spent, or you drank the whole potion, or whatever it is. One of the biggest mistakes that I made in my career as a dungeon master, and this was early in 5th edition but embarrassingly late in my DMing career, was I gave an item. It was an orb, and I gave it to Terry's character. And it was you auto succeed on persuasion checks as long as you're holding this item that you've attuned to.
Oh, dang.
Oh.
There was supposed to be a once per day and a maximum number of charges and a percentile to roll to find out whether or not you regain the charges, and if it ever hits 0 charges, you never get it again. But all of that disappeared out of the document when I sent it to him, so he just had this thing. And if I fuck up as a DM, I don't penalize the player for it.
Mm-hmm.
So when he pulled this out and he started using it, I'm like, well, hold on, what's the rest of it say? He goes, there is no rest of it. And I go, shit, okay. I let this work for this session only, but at the end of this session it breaks because it's admittedly, you have to admit, it's too powerful. It's just too powerful.
Yeah.
There was an army of giants storming the walled city that the players were in. The whole goal of this was to stall the giants as long as possible for the city full of NPCs to get into underground tunnels. And then the plan was to spend the next 2 to 3 sessions essentially playing whack-a-mole, where our guys are freedom fighters that are popping out of tunnels as giants try to beat them and kill them every time that they appear. And so they would have a big map of the city and the giants wouldn't, so on and so forth. And they were going to try to liberate the city from this army of different kinds of giants. And there'd be like this district over here is the cloud giants, and this district over here is the stone giants, and they were all worked up and going to war. He convinced all of the giants to just walk for literally weeks in that direction, north, which is just a big-ass empty desert. And he marched the entire army in like 8-10 sentences, something like that. He convinced them all to march their asses out into the desert until they were thirsty, till they were too thirsty to swallow, and then turn around and walk back. And of course, by then it was too late, and they all died of thirst.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my.
Fucked up not just like the encounter in one session, but every other session that I had planned up until that point. And this whole thing happened in the first half of the session. So I was in a mad scramble to pull shit out of my ass for the rest of the session because I guess I hit the backspace button.
I had a similar experience as a player. I was playing in a like Japanese inspired 5th edition D&D campaign a long time ago, and I was playing an Oni that was worshiping a dragon god. Sounds familiar, Adam, but it's actually very different. Thank you very much. But she was actually a priestess, so she carried around dragon bones as a thing that like she used to scry with and do divinations with. It was just a flavor thing that she would carry dragon bones. Somewhere down the line, I'm gonna say like 2 or 3 years into this campaign, my staff got an upgrade, like the magical staff that I carried around, got a magical upgrade that I could raise undead dragons using dragon bones. He, as the DM, built that into the storyline that eventually we would come across a dragon graveyard and it would eventually help us in XYZ, and that's when it would pop off. Forgetting I had a bag full of dragon bones. And so I was able to start doing this right away because he didn't put limitations on it, because his plan was things would happen like progressively and naturally, and I would use it when I was supposed to. I did not. I was like, I have dragon bones. Dragons coming out left, right, and center. Like, I don't know where you're... Dragon, you got a dragon, you got a dragon. He's like, oh, okay.
Suddenly, so, like, the assassin that hunts down dragon bones is on your ass. Like, fuck. I'm taking that shit away by the end of the next session.
Oh my god. We did at the table during that session rectify it to say you only have 1 charge, so use it sparingly. And so, of course, I waited until the big moment that was more obvious to which I was supposed to use it. Because I, as a player, brought it to his attention, being like, so this bag of dragon bones that I have. And he's like, give me 10 minutes to think about this for a second. And then we rectified it at the table at that time. But same thing, like if he had given it to me and I, as a player, didn't say anything until I tried to pop it off later down the line, which I made the joke every once in a while that I'm going to try and do this. And he's like, stop that. It's your fault. But yeah, I mean, it's just about having that conversation, I guess, at the end of the day. But because we always come up with these ideas as DMs that we want this magical item to work for this very specific thing, your player is going to have a completely different idea on how to use it. So just be prepared.
Honestly, like I love the idea of handing out big, powerful magic items. But if you're a player and you're listening to this right now, understand that the DM is human, and when they fuck up, and we all do sometimes, understand that, yes, it's nice to have this big, powerful item, but it has to be reined in. Otherwise, the game's no fun. I have played many games in my life most of them on old consoles and old systems. And I remember, okay, you guys are old enough to remember Game Genie.
Yep.
There was just a point where the games weren't fucking fun anymore. Like once you beat the game and you know the story or you have done the big thing, there's no more challenge to this, and I'm disinterested.
Yeah, I like Game Genie, and then like Game Shark came out.
Yeah,
It was the next one where like you could unlock all the levels or all the characters of a fighting game. And like I just remember some of the most fun I ever had was doing Smash Bros. And having to do all of the challenges to unlock all these fucking characters. And then the goddamn fucking Game Shark came out, and I was like, oh, I don't have to do any of that now. I could just unlock all these characters. Like
it no longer is fun anymore. When part of the reasons I think we love playing those kinds of games is getting to that point. It's building up to that. Now, I can understand if you spend hours and hours and hours doing it and you just can't get the last little ones and you really want it, sure, fine, go ahead. You've put the time in. But yeah, I remember after a few times playing some old RPGs, and I'm just like, you know what? I'm just gonna get the rest of all the stuff here just because I can. And then when I did, I'm like, this is no longer fun anymore. Why did I even do that? It takes the joy out of it.
Yeah, I downloaded an emulator to play Street Fighter, and when I realized that I just could hit the buttons and make all of the, big badass things go off, that's no challenge, it's not fun, right? So, like, even getting the big badass items and weapons and stuff, there's got to be a limitation, right? Anyway, before we end up falling down a rabbit hole any further on this, let's jump into an info break.
We previously covered quite a bit in our discussion on Dungeon Master tips in 5th edition. For all of those episodes and more, you can follow or subscribe at Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and dozens of other podcast apps. And if you'd like to support us, you can donate through the website, check out our store, or join our Patreon and get access to other episodes and series. If you'd like to pay for some ad space on It's a Mimic, or just send a shout out to a friend, please reach out to us through our email and website that are listed in the show notes below.
Normally this is the part of the show where you get an update on what's coming up this week, but instead, I'm going to use this time to remind the collectors and completionists out there about the impending changeover that's coming at the end of the year. In November, the new Player's Handbook comes out. December sees the new DMG, and January gets the new Monster Manual. And while no one has expressly said this anywhere online, it is very likely that Wizards of the Coast will do what they've been doing with D&D Beyond when something new replaces something old. The old stuff will become unavailable for future purchases. That means you have about 6 months from the time of this release to go flesh out your 5th edition core rules. Because I just checked online, and both Volos and Tome of Foes are already about 30% more expensive than they once were due to them being out of print. So, if you need to budget and you're looking to maintain access to magic item tables, monster lore, and some subclasses that are going to be replaced, this might be the time to start saving and planning. Anyway, let's get back to the episode.
All right, so the first items that we're going to kind of look at here for magical items is the idea of cursed items. And as fun as this idea is, and as compelling as it is, I hate saying this, but we're sorely lacking any information that 5th edition really gives us. Really, the only spot we have it is in the DMG, and it's just a small paragraph. And essentially, as written, it is items that have the cursed tag on there. And again, it would usually tell you what the curse is on the item itself. But what's interesting about cursed items is that even if you try to identify the items, whether getting someone else to do it or even an identify spell, it will not reveal that it is a cursed item. However, as a DM, you have the ability to provide lore about the item, and you could hint at there being a curse in there, at least give some backstory of it, and the character might pick up on it. Now, again, it should be a surprise to the characters. It shouldn't be something they are expecting. Now, you can remove the curse with a remove curse spell.
Boo.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, super easy. Yeah.
Okay, but if they don't know, because if you can't notice, you have to tell them that it's cursed. They won't know technically that it's cursed. They would just make the assumption it is cursed.
But knowing you're cursed and then having to quest to get rid of the curse is such a good plot hook.
It is. It really is.
Fucks that up. So
fair enough.
Yeah, I know it can't, but generally according to the DMG, it is you can use a remove curse spell, but you're not necessarily to do it. You're not able to remove it voluntarily unless you have that specific spell prepared, which if you have a cleric in the party, give them a day and they'll prepare it for themselves. Now, I think one of the dangers, though, that if we were to think of if we think of cursed items, is, as you said, Megan, does the character really know that it's cursed? And I actually really like that it says that an identify spell won't reveal that. And as a DM, if you play this right, you can easily flavor it that no, this just keeps happening to you. You don't know why, but it does. And or subtle things here and there. Whatever the curse is, make it subtle. Make it so that it's not specifically from one item, but it could be from anything, or it could be just bad circumstance.
My only concern with that is if they don't know why this is happening and it's just this bad thing keeps happening, you're going to roll with disadvantage today. You're the only character that's going to do it, and you don't know why it's happening, but you're going to roll with disadvantage today. Your players had better trust your dungeon master really, really, really well, or that's going to be considered adversarial DMing.
Adversarial DMing, absolutely. But that's why I think it's a good way to flavor it, rather than just saying, "Oh, you're gonna have disadvantage on all your checks today." No, it's like it could be more so on you're doing a survival check. For some reason, it's just not as you can't remember as much as you thought you did about survival, about in these woods. Something is just blocking you from understanding it. And it's going to cause them to think, what is blocking me? Rather than just, I'm being punished, it provides story.
Adding a narrative context to this sentence or this line of comments instead of a personal context to it is going to make a world of difference. I like what you said, and I think that it's really subtle. Maybe not all the listeners picked up on it. It's a difference between you roll with disadvantage, and for some reason that you can't figure out, there's this nagging urge that is blocking you from, and you make it a third party or an overarching narrative thing that is not targeting the player. The player's just a victim of this existing
circumstance.
situation. Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. So that's, I think, going to be the difference between cursed items used well and becoming adversarial.
I agree. But that's about it. That's all we have for cursed items, really, from the DMG.
That's actually way more than we have from the DMG. You added a
You're
lot.
right. Sorry, I added a fair bit in there. I'm sorry.
There was some flourish, yeah.
It needed that. It just
absolutely.
further explanation needed.
No, but you're absolutely right. Like cursed items are one of those things at the moment a DM realizes for the first time, I can do this. They want to do it so badly. And then it doesn't pan out, or it's underwhelming because of remove curse, or they piss off a player like, well, fuck, I'm not going to do that again. And we just leave it and never come back to it. Or we very rarely come back to it. So let's grab dice because I have questions. Let's roll initiative.
15.
I also rolled an 8, Adam.
Yay. Roll off.
6.
4.
Good man.
All right. So Tyler.
Well, I'm winning today.
You are winning today. Do you like to hand out cursed items when you DM?
I try and be very sparing to who I give a cursed item out to when I do give out cursed items, or I might flavor it. I might homebrew it a little bit, so it's a cursed item, but there's also a boon to it as well. So they actually want to keep it, and rather than just, oh no, I don't want this thing. I want to flavor it so something that makes them want to keep it or that they're unaware of it.
Mm-hmm.
But I will not do this often because it's a lot of work on my part. But also I want my players not to get tired of it.
Yeah. Like I kind of agree, and I would hand out, I only ever have the idea of handing out cursed items when it feels appropriate that a cursed item is going to exist. I don't hand them out for no reason, right?
It
Like
has to fit.
it has to fit. Like it has to be like you were hunting down in the horde of a necromancy wizard. Like, of course, you're going to come up with some maybe potentially cursed item, which gives your team the mental thought to think maybe this skull that is crystallized I'm about to pick up might cause me a problem. You know what I mean? So to your early points, if you just hand out a cursed item for no reason, no backstory, and no internalized warning for your group, or at least one person in the group that might have the forethought to be like, maybe not. Again, it could be looked as like you're victimizing your players in some way, shape, or form, just for fun on your own part as a DM, which can be entertaining for a one shot or something small. But I think for a long-standing campaign where we tend to collect items and hoards, Only use them when it makes sense, and only use them when it fits within the storyline, and give them a little bit of heads up and a warning. Maybe it fits into one character's backstory where it looks familiar. They have a memory of it. The identify spell won't work, but someone might be like, no, like I kind of maybe they have a dream the first night they've had it in their possession, being like, this item might not be good for you. Or the paladin or the lawful good character, it has like a weird premonition of this might not be good. You know what I mean? Like, let's maybe like hide this or tuck this away until we can find out more. And it does add an extra plot hook to find out what this cursed item is, because you don't necessarily know what it's doing. And that can add a level of fun to like a side quest or what have you in your campaign. But I wouldn't do it without purpose. It has to have a reason for being there.
I also, yes, I hand out cursed items. I do it semi-frequently. Like I want at least one per tier in each campaign. However, I usually wanted something that can be easily dealt with, but not remove curse. Remove curse pisses me off. I think about it like this. When you can, in order to make a spell permanent, you want this teleportation circle to always be here. You have to cast it 100 days in a row on this spot. If I'm going to do this to a magic item, where I'm going to have to spend 100 days doing this, the fact that some freaking wet fart in an adventuring outfit can walk in and be like, well, I'm going to cast remove curse, and undo it, no one would be cursing items then. It would just, like, it's way too much effort. So fuck that noise. No, that doesn't work in my campaigns. But I agree with everything that you guys said. There needs to be a reason. I just want to take it one step a little bit further. That reason should not be the plot hook. This is where I have run into issues before. First of all, I think it's worth noting that there's a very famous sword named Tetanus that exists in Dan's campaigns. It is a rusted-ass sword, and if you wield it, it gives you a couple of bonuses, but then slowly starts to work away at you, and it's sentient, but it stays quiet for a while just to slowly become a voice in your head. It's very insidious, but there's no warning. It's just, if you've played one of his campaigns, you see a rusty sword, don't fucking touch it. If you've never played in his campaign before, you will pick it up, and then you're fucked. Right? And it just gets worse and worse and worse, and it takes a lot to get rid of it. But so I don't hand them out at random. I do make them plot points, but if I do make it a plot point, then it's got to be the end of the quest or the middle of the quest. It can't be, hey, I got this cursed item. We killed a couple goblins. I picked up this ruby, and now my butthole does fire damage to me every 10 hours. Like, I need to go remove this fucking. I'm sorry, Megan's having a little meltdown. It's the ruby of Taco Bell is what
I was just thinking it's something to do with a pepper of some sort.
Yeah.
I just oh man, I'm dating a man who has a sensitive tummy, so this is
No, the item is called the ghost pepper.
So the idea here is that I don't pick it up off goblins, and then that is going to have them go find out where the ruby came from and the history of the ruby, and this unlocks the whole campaign. If I'm doing that with a cursed item, that's all well and good, but it usually makes very, very important, and I'm going to have to lock them in and be like, you can't unattune from it, and it's going to be punishing so early that, and then become either mundane or solved pretty quickly, like mid-campaign at best. It doesn't have the good payoff you're looking for. It's better to do it later. It's better to do it to higher powered characters that have some resources, especially if it's going to eat up some of the resources. Like, hey, remove curse will remove the curse from this for 24 hours, but you have to cast it every day at dawn for you to get all of the benefits and none of the detriments. That at least eats up a fucking spell slot, right? Every day. It should be that kind of shit. So while I do hand out cursed items, I don't, and I want them to be plot related, I absolutely do not want it to be the plot hook. I want it to be one of the things that is the consequence of doing this quest.
It adds to the story. It's not the story itself.
Right. That's the thing with, I look at like Lord of the Rings is such a good example for so many things, but the fact that Bilbo comes across the ring and he just fucking does feels really ham-fisted. The fact, and I know it was a retcon, like it's the Ring of Power, it's super evil. When he came across it, it was in The Hobbit, whatever. The fact that Frodo is now charged with this and this like seemingly mundane whatever, and it's like the root of all evil. This is the big power. If he had known that going in, and because he knew it, but he didn't know it. He was told, we got a quest, we got to destroy it, we're going to take it to Elrond, let's go for a walk. He had no idea the hell he was going to go through. If he'd picked it up halfway through to say, okay, I've seen horrors, this is how I end the horrors. But he went from a pretty comfy suburban lifestyle,
Yeah.
right? It just doesn't line up in my head. Not as neatly as I want, without kind of hand waving good versus evil a little bit, which is what classic fantasy is. I just wouldn't do that in modern fantasy.
Yeah, fair.
Besides a simple fetch quest, can you come up with one plot hook based around a cursed item, Tyler?
Well, if I were to think of a ring and you need to get rid of it,
That is a fetch quest.
You
You're
can-
just fetching a mountain.
You're fetching the mountain.
So you made reference to the Lord of the Rings. I just had to put that in there. No, the idea that I have for a fun quest to do around a cursed item is I want the party to actually go on a quest to make a cursed item, because maybe they're needing it to give to an evil lord that is in power to make them fall, or they need to make a cursed item to give to an adversary of theirs so they are weak with it. But I want them to, rather than go get this thing, it's go make this thing and flavor it however you need to, so that whoever you're making it for will take it and not know it.
That's pretty good for an evil campaign, especially. Incidentally, I
Mhm.
want to point out, you said this earlier, cursed items, the identify spell doesn't work on them.
Correct.
But it does. It works on everything except the curse. If it's
Except
a
the
plus 3
curse,
sword,
yes.
right? But that's the only thing. So I wouldn't even tell. It's the only thing that doesn't work. If there are negative things, if you put on the thing, but it doesn't say cursed in brackets, then it's not a cursed item, and they will learn these negative properties. So you do have to indicate, like, look for the word cursed when you're looking at magic items and stuff in D&D. If it has negative properties, you don't get to hide that. It's those negative properties are meant to be discovered.
Yes, absolutely. But as soon as you mention curse, then they can think the remove curse spell. Whereas if they just think, oh, this is just part of the item.
Right, but okay, here's my point. If you have a +1, if you got a +1 longsword that does 1 damage to you every time you kill someone, then that is a magic item identify works. If you have a +1 magic longsword that does 1 point of magic damage to you, but it says cursed in brackets beside attunement, then they don't know what does the poison to them until they use it. That's the difference. Identify will show it unless it says cursed. It's one of the weird technical rules of 5th edition.
No, fair enough.
This is going to be important when we start talking about artifacts later, because all the artifacts have like detriments and negative things. Your players will know that the moment they
Yes.
Yeah.
identify it,
Yeah.
right? Because none
That's
of them
fair.
are cursed items, though they fucking should be, some of them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, some of them are.
Yeah, did you get one that's
Yep.
cursed? Because I got some nasty ones.
It's gonna be a fun conversation.
Megan, do you have a plot hook that's not a fetch quest?
Kind of. And it's inspired by one of the pieces that we talked about, I think on, I don't know if it was the first episode or the second episode, but the demon armor. I don't know if you guys remember, but it's the one that it's an armor that you wear that ups your AC and gives you a bunch of added bonuses. But when you put it on, you cannot take it off without the remove curse spell.
Yeah.
And that's the piece, because it's the curse that you won't necessarily learn when you identify the spell. So again, this is one that I would hand out only during a campaign where it is expected that the items that you're finding might be problematic. Or if this is a quest specifically to find this armor to help you in the quest, and the person who's going to be donning this armor knows that they are going to die wearing it. So this might even be the beloved NPC that says, no, there's a very specific set of armor that if I wear it, I will be an extra help to you in this current quest. Let's go find it. I'm going to put it on and we're going to do the thing. And then the beloved NPC character slowly starts to die of exhaustion because they can't take it off. And I feel like that would just be a really good additive to the storyline. Again, that's not the main MacGuffin, but it's going to add some role play opportunities between the characters, because they're going to be panicking, trying to take this armor off, but they have a mission in a dungeon to complete. And that character who's wearing the armor went into this knowing they are going to die wearing it. Like, that's just like the whole like sacrificial NPC storyline I would play.
I like that.
Yeah.
That is fun.
Again, be careful with exhaustion. It will kill your players faster than you realize.
Mm-hmm. That's why I
Because-
say do it to your NPCs, not your players.
And actually, that was gonna be my plot hook. Is I'm gonna aim for NPCs, but it's gonna be like the bloodline of this house is cursed, or the heirloom that the king has to wear by tradition is also cursed. Like, or there's an artifact in the center of this town that means that nobody can move away from it. But while they're here, they operate all with a consistent 2 levels of exhaustion. So The idea here is the quest is go find a way, a ritual probably, or a series of other items or whatnot to be able to end the curse, right?
Yeah.
There's one heir. It like the curse can only be broken by an heir of this bloodline. There's one in existence on the next continent over. You got to go get him. You then have to put the right weapon in his hand. You then have to get the cleric of this god to bless that weapon while in this place, and then they can use it to smash the thing. That's the kind of quest I'm looking for, right?
Yeah. It also just like it reminded me of Game of Thrones and how the throne itself nicks those that sit on it and like slowly poison and killing you over time if you aren't worthy to sit on it. But really, we know it's just they're dying of tetanus, but that's fine. But you know, like that could be a cursed item in D&D, right?
Mhm.
It's like again, it could be the necklace of like a royalty thing or a brooch the queen has to wear or what have you, right? That will
Brooch of
slowly kill
tetanus.
them. The brooch of tetanus.
The curse
really
of the
cool.
little prick.
But no, it's really cool. I like that idea. That like it's just an heirloom that people wear, not knowing that that's the item that's doing it, but there's just a curse on this family. And it's going to take, again, a amount of time to figure out what item it is that's cursing them. And then again, trying to figure out how to. And then the fetch quest ends up being, how do we break this curse, right?
There is another quest that I really like, and I've been toying with how to do this in Dungeons and Dragons because it's such a passive thing, but it can be so fucky as well. There's a book that Stephen King wrote called The Talisman. And the idea here is that a young boy has to travel into a fantasy world to go get this crystal ball, essentially, and bring it back. His mother's dying from cancer. This thing is going to save her. But the curse is it's not light. It keeps getting heavier. And if he puts it down, it will shatter. And he's got to travel for days. So it's him holding on to this item and struggling to get back as the forces of evil are constantly on his heels. That's something I would love to play with in D&D. The idea that the only curse here is that you might break the thing and we need the thing. So don't do exactly this. Hey, this can be used as a spellcasting focus if you attune to it. Once you're attuned to it, you can't unattune to it, but it also means that if you cast a spell through it, it will break. And we need this to finish the whatever, right? Now your spellcaster's like, well, fuck, here's my crossbow, I guess.
Mm-hmm. But like, I feel like that could be also played on like with verbal curses from folks, right? Because immediately when you started talking about that story, my brain is specifically then all of a sudden jumped back to like Orpheus and Eurydice and the fact that he said you can leave with your love of your life if you walk in a straight line and don't turn back to see if she's still there.
Mm-hmm.
And he turns back, right? It's like that folklore warning being like, don't do this, because if it's like the Fae, right?
Yeah.
Don't do this and just do exactly as I say and you'll be fine. But you always think it's some kind of a test and you do things in a different way, right?
Yeah. Or when the old woman you ran over says, thinner.
Just run away. Like
Yeah. If you do that voice, it will be see ya.
when a young woman asks you what your sun sign, star sign, and moon sign are, just run away. Like,
Well, now that you mention it, give me a moment. I got it written down here somewhere.
I mean, I can help you with that, my guy. Did you want to
Run away.
Oh, Lanta. All right, me time?
You time.
All right, so now we're going to talk about sentient magical items. So these only have a few rules as written in the DMG, but for those at home who are not entirely aware, a sentient magical item is basically a weapon or an item that has a lifelike personality. So it has quirks, flaws, ideals, the whole shebang. This can happen through ghostly possession, reminiscence of the magic that was used to create it, or just a simple haunting of a previous owner, you know, just the classic little story. Some basic things to note is that they are controlled by the DM. So we did talk about this a little bit earlier in this episode, but rules is written, they're controlled by the DM, not the wearer or player of the character holding the item. So of course, when a character has a sentient item or an ancestral sword, that sounds fun. But remember, it is in the hands of your DM. So this will need to be a potentially collaborative thing that you guys need to do together, as something that this could either be a boon or a fucking thorn in your side. The last general thing to note here is that consumables like potions and scrolls, Adam talked about early, cannot be sentient. For some reason, I didn't think of this as a rule as written, but it seems right.
You have digested the soul of this person when you took that healing potion.
Yeah, it just seems like it seems fitting that that's a rule is written, but that's just me.
Now your farts are haunted.
Spicy farts.
I knew I shouldn't have had that ghost pepper.
Silent but deadly.
Oh Lord.
I think I made that same fucking joke last session.
Probably, yeah.
So, yeah, moving on.
All right, so then to touch a little bit on creating a sentient magical weapon or item, they are developed the same way you would create an NPC or character personality. What you want to determine is abilities, ways of communication, senses, alignment, and then characteristics. So abilities obviously is determining their intelligence, wisdom, and charisma ability scores. You can determine this by randomly rolling a 4d6, drop the lowest, the kind of way you would maybe create a character, and then assigning the abilities from there. A way of communication is the fact that all sentient weapons have a mode of communication. If you want help to determine, there is a table in the DMG with 3 options. It's a D100 table, so it's quite broad, but 0 to 60 is that it broadcasts only emotions. 61 to 90, it can speak, read, and write 1 or more languages. And then 91 to 100 adds the ability to speak telepathically with its wearer. Senses is basically the weapon's awareness of its surroundings and its ability to see and hear what's happening around it. Once again, there is, of course, a table that can be rolled on to help determine its ability to do so. So it's only a D4 table, though. And basically what happens is the distance in which it can see and hear increases from 30 to 120 feet from between 1 and 3. But if you happen to roll a 4, it's a 120 distance of seeing and hearing with dark vision. For alignment, obviously, if you don't have a backstory to support the alignment of your item or weapon that's already pre-written, there is a table you can roll on to help determine what this is. So I do like to make sure there is a reason. So even if you are rolling randomly, I think that should provide as inspiration as to why they are chaotic good or chaotic evil or lawful neutral, right? Even if it's unorthodox, like it's a magical item that was created by someone who hated one particular person. So whenever they hear that person's name, they lose their minds, like, and they're chaotic evil towards that person. Sure. Like, I just feel like there needs to be a reason, even if you're doing a random roll. Finally, characteristics. This is just helping flesh out their personality. Kind of like, again, it gives its flaws, ideals, and other potential bonds that it might have. The book recommends using the tables that are actually used to create NPCs that can be found in Chapter 4 of the DMG guide, but also mentions to feel free to re-roll till you find ones that work for the item itself. So again, if you're creating this item from scratch, keeping all these things in mind so that they actually have a cohesive storyline as to why they are the way that they are, treat them like you would a regular NPC or a character that you might be creating. So again, you can re-roll in this table, or you can simply just use it for inspiration to kind of navigate you in one direction or another. But yeah, that is the gist of sentient items and how to create such things.
So there's D10 table for the special purposes and whatnot. There are 3 of us, so let's each grab a D10 and roll and see what some of the examples are. Megan, do you have 900 D10s within arm's reach?
I have 1.
Roman would be disappointed.
I know, he like heard that and he shuddered somewhere in the corner.
I rolled a 2.
I rolled 3.
I rolled a 1.
Wow. Okay, so we're
This
just
is
coming.
a D10, right?
This is weak. All right, Tyler, what's your number 1 there?
Hold on.
Oh, you don't have it open? I got it open.
Nope.
Don't worry about it. Number 1 is aligned. Tyler, your magic item was this item seeks to defeat or destroy those of a diametrically opposed alignment. Such an item is never neutral. So if it's chaotic good, it's going after lawful evil, right?
Yeah.
I rolled a 2, Bane. The item seeks to defeat or destroy creatures of a particular kind, such as fiends, shape changers, trolls, or wizards. And 3 is a protector. Or Megan, this item seeks to defend a particular race or a kind of creature, such as elves or druids. There are 7 other options on this table. A lot of them are really good inspiration. I'm not sure I'd roll on any of these randomly. I would see what the options are and select
What best
options or be
fits.
inspired by them and design my own, right?
It makes sense because I feel like it can get like too convoluted and complicated to make things work if you legitimately did a roll at random chaos weapon. However, that would be a lot of fun at some point to do that.
Yeah.
If I were to roll two, well, Adam, if you were to roll two, would you have a particular voice in mind for that one?
It depends on the weapon, or the item itself. Honestly, my voice is going to be based off of the item. If the item, for example, that's sentient is an anvil, it's going to have a deep voice, right? It's going to have an echoey voice. It's not necessarily going to be based on what the purpose is or the alignment of it. Although, I do like a good booming lawful evil voice.
I was
But
thinking of something more like Bane.
yes, I rolled Bane. It is not Tom Hardy's version of Bane. There are all sorts of different voices, but I'm going to be inspired by the thing itself. Like, it's going to be, if it's a book, it's going to whisper as the pages flip back and forth, right? So one of the things that I want to point out as well when it comes to sentient items is sentient items do have their own willpower. They have their own personality, and they have their own history. This means that they have their own conflict because they will want things that your player might not want, or that their character might not want, or they will know things that they don't want to divulge, or they will want to accomplish things that might not line up with what the players want. With all of this in mind, it is good to come up with a very simple conflict that is not going to completely derail your fucking campaign. Something like, if it's a cloak, it demands that it's worn. Don't fold me up and put me in your pack, right? If it is a spyglass that's sentient, it does not want to go into an extra dimensional space. It needs to be able to, and it doesn't want to go underground, right? It needs to be able to be close enough to the sky, even if it's packed away in its carrying case, right? If the person doesn't actually agree with this turn of events or acquiesce to the conflict, then you can do some things to punish them, like make it impossible to be attuned to, or say, hey, you'll get all of these extra bonuses except this one, right? Or my personal favorite, we will do psychic battle and I might take over your body. So there are rules. If a sentient item attempts to take control of its wielder, they've got to do a charisma saving throw, which is going to be roughly 12 plus the item's charisma modifier. On a failed save, they're charmed by the item for 1d12 hours. This is not a minor thing that happens. And while that happens, they're supposed to just follow the item's commands to the best of their abilities. However, if they take damage, they can repeat the save. If they do succeed, then these effects end. Whatever the case, if it works or however long it works, the item can't attempt to do it again until the next day at dawn. So,
Can I add a little caveat to this?
sure.
There are some items that will say otherwise. So this is unless otherwise specified, these are the rules to be followed by.
The
However,
the general rules in 5th edition are anytime you read a basic rule that's all encompassing, it is superseded by a specific rule.
exactly. I just want to make that. I want our heroes to understand that.
So let me, for a moment, jump into some sample sentient items. They give us 4 in the DMG, and all 4 are just batshit crazy. If you hand one of these out in your campaign and you are not at a significantly high enough level, you might have just fucked your campaign. But here we go. And just for the record, 5th edition assumes that we're talking 8th level or higher. That seems early to me, but you make up your own mind. The first one I'm going to talk about is Moonblade. This is a sentient neutral good longsword, but it's not the Moonblade, it's a Moonblade because there's a bunch of them. Millennia ago, all elven great houses had a Moonblade, and they were inherited by worthy heirs within the bloodlines, usually parent to child once the parent dies. There are not many left, and it takes a whole lot to attune to it. A, you have to be an elf or a half-elf. B, you have to be neutral good, specifically neutral good. C, you've got to complete a ritual. D, you have to do the ritual in an elven throne room or a temple to the elven gods. E, it has to have no current master or that master must have recently died. F, it has to deem you worthy. And in order to be worthy, you have to be not cowardly, not chaotic, not corrupt, and you have to support elven kind and what elves want. Otherwise, you become rejected, which means you roll attacks, saves, and checks with disadvantage for 24 hours. And no, I don't mean with the Moonblade, I mean all for the next 24 hours. All attacks, saves, and checks. And remember, this includes
Ouch.
death saves.
Oh,
If you are accepted as being worthy, then you get to be attuned to it until you die or it's destroyed. You cannot unattune from this. Also, a rune will permanently appear on the blade right next to the other runes. Each rune indicates a master that it has had or currently has. And to make it absolutely just batshit insane, each one of the runes does a different thing. There are usually 1d6 plus 1 runes. There's like 10 or 12 options, 12 options on a percentile die table. And so you could have potentially 7 of these, and it's fucking wild. So the first one, the first rune, assuming that even if you are picking it up and you're the first person to ever wield this, it just makes it a +1 sword. So it's everything after that. They include, actually, you know what? Hell, let's roll for it. I'm gonna give each of us one quality here. A Moonblade property. Percentile dice. Actually, do you guys have percentile dice? Do you want to roll them yourselves?
sure. I got it.
All right.
23.
23. Tyler, you increase the bonus to attack and damage rolls by 1 to a maximum of +3. Reroll if the Moonblade already has a +3 bonus. Megan, what'd you get?
52.
52. The Moonblade gains a randomly determined minor property, see special features, earlier in this chapter, which is that one that we just rolled on with Protector and Bane and Aligned, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and then I rolled an 81, which is when you hit with an attack using the Moonblade, the attack does an extra 1d6 slashing damage. So it's these bonuses, but they keep stacking up to like 6 of these 12 things. It's a little wild. The if you roll 100, the Moonblade functions as a Vorpal sword, which we covered last section, which means you get to snickety snack some motherfuckers' heads off. So
Love a good snickety snack.
that's what I'm talking about.
Now I'm hungry.
Now, the Moonblade itself has an intelligence of 12, a wisdom of 10, and a charisma of 12 as well. It does have that, can hear, and has dark vision out to 120 feet. It can only communicate by sending an emotion-fueled tingle through the player's hands when it wants to, or it can send visions while its master is asleep or entranced. The main thing it wants is to just further elven ideals, and therefore elven kind. It wants bravery, music, beauty, and life. These are the things that are important to it. But loyalty is especially important, and it will bond to an elven bloodline for generations. And if that bloodline ends, it will fade and no longer have any magical properties. Once it has accepted a new owner, it will be unwaveringly loyal until that owner dies. The problem with this is that sometimes a Moonblade is too overconfident in their loyalty, and they've been known to bond to those who turn out to be not worthy. So that's a problem. That is the only one that's like, hey, there's multiple of them. The other 3 that we have as far as the DMG goes are all one of a kind, amazingly fucking wild. The first one I'm going to talk about is Wave. This is a neutral trident covered in engravings of waves, seashells, and aquatic creatures, and can only be attuned to by someone who worships a sea god. Yar. Don't worry if you don't worship a sea god. Wave will accept new converts as well. So if you don't before, and you find Wave, you're like, yeah, I can do this. Good enough. This is a +3 magic weapon. On a crit, the target takes necrotic damage equal to 50% of their maximum hit points.
Oh,
It also acts
wow.
like a lot of different magic items, including a cube of force, a cap of water breathing, a weapon of warning, and a trident of fish command. So you just become fucking Aquaman. That's
Yeah.
Delightful.
It's got an intelligence of 14, a wisdom of 10, a charisma of 18, and again, it can hear and has dark vision out to 120 feet. Wave knows Aquan, which is one of the primordial dialects. It can speak telepathically with its wielder, and it can talk to sea creatures. It will even telepathically include the wielder in the conversation. Here's where it gets fun. Wave likes to sing when it's bored, and will often just lapse into sea shanties or hymns to the sea gods. Its main purpose is to convert creatures to worship aquatic gods. And if it doesn't work, then fucking kill them. Those are the 2 options that we have. Now, Wave also secretly worries that its destiny might be to kill a sea god, because way back when it was forged by storm giants on this lonely island named Thunderforge, it came into being and realized that the storm giants were actually a family that was being held captive by one of the sea gods, and that makes Wave worry about its destined purpose. So it's like doubled down on its devotion as a result of this. It's also tied to Whelm. Whelm is a lawful neutral +3 warhammer that can only be attuned to by dwarves. It hates goblinoids and giants, and it wants to protect dwarves. It also wants to be returned to the clan that created it, the creatively named the Mighty Hammer clan.
Very
The
nice.
catch is that if you are attuned to it and you make an attack with Whelm yesterday, then today you are so afraid of being outdoors that you have disadvantage on checks, saves, and attacks if you can see the daytime sky. But there's a lot to like about it. Once a day, you can use an action to cast Detect Evil or Good or Locate Object. You also know about any secret or hidden doors within 30 feet of you all of the time. You can throw the Warhammer, doing an additional 1d8 bludgeoning damage. That's 2d8 versus giants. And immediately after the attack, it flies back to your hand, Thor style, or it lands at your feet if your hands are full. And also, once a day, you can send out a shockwave by hitting the ground with Whelm, and every creature you choose within 60 feet has to save on a DC 15 con save. If they fail, they're stunned for a minute. The creature does get to try to save again at each of their turns at the end. So Whelm has an intelligence of 15, a wisdom of 12, and a charisma of 15. Again, it can hear and has dark vision up to 120 feet. It can understand, speak, and read Dwarvish, Giant, and Goblin. Most importantly, and I need to really drive this home because this is the thing that really makes me want to have it, it screams out Dwarvish battle cries during combat. There's no mechanic for that. It's just consistently screaming in Dwarvish.
That
Yeah,
is
it starts to
awesome.
Google dwarvish sentences.
Yep.
I
So-
love baloney.
Much to Whelm's shame, there was a dwarven lord not long ago who had Whelm, but he was turned into a vampire and seduced Whelm to commit great acts against dwarves, even killing some of his own clan. But Whelm's not going to talk about that, and you're not going to get that information from the item. The last one to talk about is Black Razor, probably one of the most famous swords in all of D&D. This is a great sword. It can be attuned to by anyone with a non-lawful alignment. Its blade shines like a night sky full of stars, and the hilt is adorned with pieces of obsidian. Black Razor is used to having his commands followed, and it's going to command you with a deep, booming voice. It believes that all life has burst from a plane of negative energy, and all life will eventually return to that plane. It's Black Razor's job, though, to expedite the process. So let's get this fucking train rolling. Its secondary want is to be reunited with two other weapons that it feels close to, Wave and Whelm, even though it argues consistently with Whelm and it finds Wave boring as fuck. But they're family, they want to be together. But really, this is all about eating souls. It needs its owner to kill, and if the owner doesn't use Black Razor to kill within 3 days, there's going to be words with the current owner at the next sunset. You're going to hear about this shit. Intelligence is 17, wisdom is 10, charisma is 19. So you're going to hear about it, and you're going to hear about it loudly. This weapon can hear and has dark vision out to 120 feet. It can speak, read, and understand common and can communicate telepathically with its attuned creature. Also, it knows every language its wielder knows. It has a +3 sword, or it is a +3 sword. You can't be charmed or frightened while you wield it, and it can cast haste on you once per day, and it concentrates on it so that you don't have to. You are aware of every creature from tiny or bigger within 60 feet instantly in 5th edition. That's a holdover from previous editions where there was diminutive, so you wouldn't know worms and shit.
Yeah.
This is literally fucking everything. This is like microscopic bugs all the way up to God, right? Like, if it's a creature, you know, as long as it's not constructs or undead. If you reduce a creature to 0 hit points with Black Razor and the creature isn't an undead or construct, then it devours the soul of the creature, and that creature cannot be resurrected without a wish spell. Once it devours the soul, it grants the one wielding it temporary hit points equal to the maximum hit points of the creature it just killed. So if you kill a dragon with this, you will get 300 hit points.
Nice.
These temporary hit points last 24 hours, and as long as you have those temporary hit points, you have advantage on all attacks, saves, and checks. The catch is, if you hit an undead with Black Razor, it does 1d10 necrotic damage to you, heals that undead with the same amount, and if you drop to 0 hit points that way, Black Razor devours you.
Yeah.
This gives me straight video game vibes.
Yeah, right.
I'm using Black Razor in my campaign.
Are you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They haven't found him yet, but he's going to be used because he's tied to the Raven Queen is going to be my big bad evil.
Yeah.
And Black Razor is very much connected to that. We talked about Black Razor in one of the Undead episodes, and that was what inspired me to be like, I want to fucking use this guy.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love the fact that it's like the sneaky link of the curse of, yes, you get all these boons, but if you attack an undead with it, it kind of fucks you up. And that's what kind of pushes you in that direction. And it's an undead campaign. So someone is going to have a bit of a hard time with this one. And it's a shorter campaign. So I'm okay with having punishing cursed weapons that they're using because it's going to be a very short period of time that they're going to be utilized. Right. So, but yeah, I love Black Razor. Fucking love it.
I
Black
love
Razor.
that with.
Sorry, go ahead, Tyler.
I was gonna say with all three of these, with Wave, I'll just have a Spotify playlist ready with shanties. With Whelm, I would just have Google Translate on set to Dwarvish, whatever. And then Black Razor is just going to be a list of insults. After 3 days, he's just start hurling them at the player.
Yeah.
I like Black Razor to be, in my head, Black Razor is always more seductive than that. It's a deep, booming voice, but it's whispering to you going, doesn't that feel good to kill that motherfucker?
Yeah.
Right?
It's like, why do you always drop the tone of your voice when you're trying to be seductive? It's like, stop doing that. It's like, no, I'm gonna.
baby, no way. So the thing that I want to point out is that there is one place where you canonically can find Black Razor, Wave, and Whelm, and that is in White Plume Mountain, which is in the Tales from the Yawning Portal. It is not a big dungeon, and it expects you to be level 8. So
have fun.
Yeah, good luck.
If you detour in there, you may fuck your campaign a little bit. So yay. Anyway, let's roll dice. I have some questions.
12.
I got an 8.
I got 12.
Roll off. Megan, you're tying everybody.
I got rolled another 12.
I got a 14.
Tyler.
Yes.
Do you like using sentient items in your games?
I really like using sentient items in my games just because it gives the ability for more flavor. If you haven't found out by now, I love adding to story.
Yeah.
And so I find sentient items are a great way of adding to the story. And even if it doesn't even tie into the main plot, even if it's just like a side quest, items that they can do, it's a fun thing that adds to the playability of it. It's as if you're as if you're introducing another NPC that's staying with the party. Or if you're like me, it gives the ability for your players who want to have another character they can play. But that's me homebrewing that in there. But I do enjoy using sentient items just because it increases the story aspect of the game. Now, am I going to throw these all the time? No. Heck no.
Yeah.
It's only on occasion, on very, very rare occasions. But I do enjoy using them.
Yeah.
Megan,
Same.
Yeah.
Pretty much along the same lines. I like using them, but it has to be sparing and there has to be purpose. Like again, as I mentioned, I'm using Black Razor in my campaign, but they have not come across it as written. They've seen him because they saw him get stolen, but they don't know that it's him. They're just retrieving it and they don't know what they're going to get themselves into until they get it. And then the whole purpose of them finding it is it's going to push the plot forward once they get to the MacGuffin kind of thing. Right. And again, they're not going to have it for long, but they're going to feel the effects of dealing with him, right? So, and dealing with him helps them uncover puzzle pieces towards the larger plot point. So, again, very strategic, very specific, because these ones, specifically the ones that we used as examples, are extremely dangerous. And to your point, Adam, if you add them into your campaign too early, can be pretty game breaking, and you as a DM are going to be clawing shit back pretty quick. Yeah. So, yeah. I
like sentient items, in theory. I have a general rule where I don't want to get overwhelmed with them because I played in a guest start essentially for 2-3 sessions in a campaign where I came in to play a beloved NPC and I realized that every single one of the players also had a sentient item and a sidekick, and some of them had pets and mounts, and it was so overwhelming. Nothing got accomplished. Too many personalities, right? So yeah. So I like it. My general rule is one sentient item per 3 players. I'm at a table with 6 players right now. I have 2 sentient items on the table. I for the entire campaign. I'm not gonna do more than that. If one of them gets destroyed or lost, I'll bring out another one. But it's too much for me. I have so many other NPCs, so I
Yeah.
like using them, but I'm very gun shy about them.
Yeah,
Because-
especially if you have a campaign where there's a lot of NPCs that you bring in, like
that's
it's just a
just it,
lot. Yeah.
And keep in mind, you're stealing the spotlight from your players.
Mhm.
You're talking to them, but you're stealing the spotlight. Do you have any role-playing tips, Tyler, for DMs when it comes to portraying sentient items?
One thing I would say is when you're portraying a sentient item, be descriptive at first about what this item looks like, because you want your players to imagine this thing, not just hear it, but you want them to be able to picture it in their minds when you're speaking on behalf of it. So when you're role playing this sentient item, the first time they come across it, give it ample description so that from then on, they can visualize this item as it is talking.
And the more you describe something, the more that they will remember and will treat it like a set piece.
Exactly.
Yeah, they'll remember to draw attention to it, right?
Hopefully.
Yeah. My thing around this is play really hard into their ideals and what their goal is. Because we say this a lot with NPCs, but with NPCs that are just kind of like running around learning things about other player characters, like they tend to evolve with your players. Sentient weapons probably are not going to evolve with your players the way a regular NPC will. Their goal in life is going to remain the same. So if they want to collect souls, they're collecting souls. No one's going to convince them one way or another to do it any differently. You know, so that's the only difference I see between playing an NPC and playing a sentient weapon, is that they're not going to evolve nearly as quickly as an NPC will when presented with conflict with the group. So Black Razor isn't just going to sit down and be like, you're right.
No. Yeah, they're all fanatical, right?
Yeah, they're very hard set in their ways. They have their alignment. Use their alignment. Like, it's, if you're going to use a sentient weapon that has a backstory as strong as these ones are, know the backstory and stick to it. Like, it's, and if it is too overwhelming for your team, you as a DM figure out how to pivot that, because like there's always ways to get out of a magical sentient weapon appearing. You know what I mean? But gauge how well your players are interacting with it and move on from there. Like, don't be scared to claw that shit back if you have to, but remember that sentient weapons are not NPCs the way we handle NPCs. So
Yeah, my big thing is go slow, and I love your hint about commit to the conflict, commit to the motivation behind them. But I feel the need to go a step deeper, because there's a difference between an artifact that is imbued with a soul of something else, or an awakened speaking tree, or a sword that has a soul that can speak to you. These are not sentient items. These are their own things. A sentient item cannot interact with the world without you wielding them. And they are very much fucking Krang from the Ninja Turtles. Utterly fucking useless unless in the fucking command of someone that can actually move them around and get them up to things, get them to do stuff. Otherwise, it's just essentially a disembodied voice that's screaming at you until you do what it wants, right?
Sometimes in Dwarvish.
Sorry, oh yeah, it may be in Dwarvish. It's not like the speak with dead spell, right? Or the sword that has the ghost of whoever in it. That ghost remembers life. That ghost will know things about the world. I'm gonna limit what a sentient item knows, because you think about what's experienced, mostly sitting in storage, right? There's not a whole lot of I was alive and wielded by a great warrior 3,000 years ago. I come from this country. Cool. Can you tell me anything about it? Well, 300 years ago, once I was in this room with this guy who said, and that's it. Like, it's not going to know the history and the lore and the geography. It just doesn't, right? It's not going to know if it was close to a mountain, because it has 120 feet of awareness, right? So it's that kind of shit all of the time. And I'm going to really limit it, because I don't want my sentient item to just be a font of information for the players to just hardwire or short circuit rather my campaign and the exploration and knowledge role playing in my campaign. So I do limit what they know, but I don't limit what they want, right?
yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
So that brings us to the final part of this episode, and it's all about artifacts. Now, there are rules in the DMG for artifacts as well, and artifacts are usually sentient items. Not always, but usually. A lot of the same rules apply. These are singular items of legendary purpose. Some appear only when they are most needed. Some act as a portent of doom. But when they show up, it's a big fucking deal. You don't just happen upon an artifact. You usually have to quest for one, either to obtain it or to destroy it. We just found out that there's going to be, at the time of this recording, we just got a description about the new Vecna book that's coming. And it's going to be all about getting the Rod of Seven Parts, which, Megan, you should be vaguely familiar with. We fucked with this in the last campaign. But just like it was in our campaign, that's what the whole mission statement is here. This is what makes it an artifact and not just another magic weapon. Even if it's sentient or cursed or whatnot, this makes it an artifact. Artifacts have incredibly powerful magical qualities to them. And there's a list of them. There are minor beneficial properties, major beneficial properties, minor detrimental properties, and major detrimental properties. Now, we're going to talk about artifacts here in a minute, and we're going to roll on these tables, so we're not going to do it right now, but each one of these tables has roughly 10 to 12 different options on a percentile dice thing. Some of the more major things are on the tables are going to be smaller and smaller numbers to roll on. As a matter of fact, the major detrimental properties has got more options than anything else. It can get us like 20. But like it's intense, some of these things. Artifacts can't just simply be destroyed. That's another thing. That's a difference. A sentient item can still just break, but it's up to a DM to decide how an artifact is going to be destroyed. Some of the things it lists are there's a bunch of inspirations in a list in the DMG. My favorite ones were the artifact has to be dropped into the river Styx to destroy it. I thought that was really cool. The artifact must be bathed in the blood of a god or an angel. I thought that was really fucking dark. And the artifact must be struck and shattered by a special weapon crafted specifically for that purpose, which made me think about the scene in Avengers Endgame where they have to go get another special weapon crafted. Right. So, no, Infinity War. Was it Infinity War? I think it was Infinity War. So anyway, having to have like this quest about destroying an artifact is cool and flavorful. And that's what I'm all about too. I think I talked about that earlier when I was talking about cursed items, right? The moment that you've got a quest to do something special, it's no longer just cursed. You're dealing with an artifact, capital A. So there are 7 artifacts that are listed in the DMG. The first one I want to talk about before we roll on the other ones are the Wand of Orcus. This is potentially one of my favorite things out there because it is so evil. So evil. It is a sentient, chaotic, evil wand that requires attunement. It's made of bone that's as hard as iron, and it has a human skull on the end of it, and it magically changes size to comfortably fit its wielder's hand. Unfortunately, plants die, food and drink spoil, and flesh begins to rapidly rot whenever the wand is nearby. Vermin seem to love it though. Lots of flies and rats and shit. For its personality, it's, as you can assume, evil, sadistic, nihilistic, and entirely humorless. If you wield it, it will pretend to be loyal to you and will openly lie and make false promises, and it doesn't give a shit if you find out because fuck you, it's going to outlast your entire lifespan. Its real goal is to help Orcus kill literally everything in the multiverse, including you. And if you stumble upon it, it's probably because Orcus left it somewhere or with someone so that the wand can do his bidding by corrupting and killing unwitting adventurers. If anyone except Orcus tries to attune to it, they have to make a DC 17 Constitution save. On a success, they take 10d6 damage. On a failure, they die immediately and rise again as a zombie. Hard stop. That's it. That's what happens.
I love it when the weapon's just like, well, fuck you. You tried.
Yeah, that's just it. It's immediate. There is no, give it a little bit of time. It'll be okay. No, it's immediate. Good luck.
The mental stats in this thing outclasses your martial characters by a damn sight. Intelligence 16, Wisdom 12, Charisma 16. Again, dark vision and hearing out to 120 feet. It can communicate telepathically and knows common and abyssal. So, lots of bad shit. What do you get? Well, you have a +3 wand, which you can fucking hit people with. And when you do, it's a +3 to hit, obviously, and it's 2d12 +3 necrotic damage when you land a blow. You also get +3 to your AC if you're holding it. It's the only weapon I've seen that actually gives you a boost to your AC like this. It has 7 charges that it can be used for spells, and all of the spell saves are DC 18. Animate Dead and Speak with Dead each use 1 charge. Blight takes 2 charges. Circle of Death and Finger of Death cost 3 charges. And power word kill uses 4 charges.
Oh
Orcus
my.
and any one of his followers who are attuned to the wand can wield the wand and cast spells using 2 fewer charges than others to a minimum of 0, which means Blight is just for free, and Power Word Kill can then be used 3 times a day. Once per day, you can also conjure forth skeletons and zombies within 300 feet of you, and they obey your command until they are destroyed or fall apart at the next dawn. But you don't just conjure a handful, you conjure as many as equal 500 hit points worth.
Holy,
So
an
immediately
army.
raise the cemetery.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's too many.
For Orcus, he's not limited to only one or to only summoning skeletons or zombies. He can summon any undead. Fuck you guys, have a Nightwalker.
Oh,
Actually,
gee.
have 3. To destroy it, you have to free the soul of the dead hero whose skull is on top of the wand. Orcus has this hero's soul imprisoned in a secret location in the abyss, so good fucking luck. But then, once you free his soul, then this unnamed hero, we don't find out in 5th edition who this guy is, has to take it to the positive energy plane to destroy it. Regular positive energy isn't enough. You're going to the positive energy plane. Which, by the way, how do you get there?
Yeah,
It's not
that's what I
even
was just
listed
thinking.
in Spelljammer or the Planescape materials.
Positive thinking. That's how.
Yeah, hopes and dreams.
Hey,
If
there's a
you
rainbow and a unicorn.
If you don't meet the requirements, when you go to destroy it, then it just reforms back in the abyss near Orcus. Additionally, and this is where we're going to start having some fun, it has a bunch of other qualities, and this is where you roll it in the DMG. I'm going to roll really quickly. So all of this is stock. Your version, or when it gets destroyed and then remanifests, this could change, but it has the ability to, when attuned to the artifact, you can use an action to cast 1 second-level spell chosen by the DM from the wand. After you cast the spell, roll a d6. On a 1 or to 5, you cannot cast it again until the next dawn. And while attuned to the artifact, you can use it as an action to cast 1 cantrip chosen by the DM. And when you hit with a weapon attack while attuned to the artifact, the target takes an extra 1d6 damage of the weapon's type, so necrotic. So those are all the benefits. The detriments: while attuned to the artifact, you are deafened when you are more than 10 feet away from it. While you are attuned to the artifact, animals within 30 feet of you are hostile towards you. And while attuned to the artifact, you lose the ability to speak.
Jeez, if you want to
So-
talk, you need to get the thing away from you, but then you can't stand to be away from it.
Yeah, and remember, if you can't speak, you can't cast spells.
Oh man.
So these are, I went 2 minor beneficial properties, which gave us the cantrip and the 2nd-level spell. 1 major beneficial property, which gave us the extra damage when you hit something, and then the minor beneficial or the minor detrimental properties. Like there's 2 of those, and then there's the big major detriment. Right? This is what all artifacts have: are multiple things like this stacked on them. So it's a big deal to wield one of these things.
Yeah.
So we have a bunch of other ones. Let's grab our dice and roll. I got a 2.
I got a 2.
I got a
Megan.
17.
Oh,
Well,
okay.
Megan's going first. Tyler, roll off.
16.
19.
Oh,
All right, Megan, me, and then Tyler. Your luck ran out, Tyler.
it did. I'm okay.
All right. Well, I'm going to start us off with the eye and hand of Vecna, which is topical because of the announcement we just got, which is very exciting for me as a person.
You specifically, the 2 that you got were, I picked those for you.
Oh, I know. I felt it. I felt it from space. And I could pop off for hours, so I'm just going to go over some of the basics here. So, Vecna is, of course, one of the most famous and well-known liches who was taught by Orcus himself how to ascend to lichdom because of his evilness and how great his evilness was. He is basically the Voldemort of D&D, where you whisper his name and has a bunch of different names just to be safe. You're not saying his name out loud. Say it 3 times, he appears. Just kidding. That doesn't actually exist, but I mean, that's the feeling you get. He was, of course, then thwarted by his right-hand man, the ever-so-sexy Cass, to the point his kingdom was reduced to ash, and all that was left that remained was 1 hand and 1 eye. To attune to the said eye and or hand, you have to gouge out 1 eye and or lob off your left hand to add those body parts to yours to gain the benefits of these beautiful artifacts. Both the eye and the hand have separate properties where you can wear one or the other or both at the same time. And then added properties occur depending on which appendage you have shoved into your body, which is a great way to say that.
Brilliant.
So before getting too far into those details, good thing to note, the only way to destroy these artifacts, to Adam, to your point, it's a very special way to do this, is that it has to be slain by the Sword of Cass. So this was the sword that is thought to have been a part of destroying Vecna in the first place. So if destroyed by the Sword of Cass, they will burst into dust. Otherwise, they appear in one of the many vaults of Vecna around the world. So I'm going to go over a couple of the properties for the eye and then a couple properties for the hand, how they work both together, and then we'll get into some of the random roll tables here. So the properties for the eye is that it gives you true sight, as well as an X-ray vision as a bonus action, and it gives you 8 charges worth of spells. So for 1 charge, you can cast Clairvoyance. For 2 charges, you can do Crown of Madness. For Disintegrate, it's 4 charges. Dominate Monsters, 5 charges. Or Eye Bite, which is 4 charges. Then the eye can regain 1d4 or +4 expended charges daily at dawn. One of the big warnings and curses for this one would be that if you are spell casting from the eye, it's a 5% chance that every time you cast a spell successfully, that Vecna will tear your soul from your body and devour it and then start using you as a puppet. You will then become an NPC of the DM.
Well, Buck.
Yeah, enjoy.
I don't think I will. Thank you.
All right, the hand, on top of that, if you were to be wearing it, ups your strength to 20 if you're not there yet.
I love the idea that, like, if you're wearing the hand, you can't just put it on a chain around your neck. You gotta lop your hand
No, you
off.
gotta put it on.
Stick the bony end into your fucking meat socket, and then
You don the hand.
Yeah.
It just doesn't match the rest of my skin. The color's all wrong.
You know
Wait
what? That's
for
the
it.
whole point.
Wait for it, you'll rot.
Yeah. So any attack made with it gets an extra 2d cold damage and has 8 charges worth of spells. Very similar.
Sorry, guys, say it again. You said 2d what cold damage? I missed it.
2d8 of cold damage.
Okay.
Yeah, so an extra 2d8 cold damage on a hit. And then the hand does get 8 charges as well for spell casting. So you get Finger of Death for 5 charges, Sleep for 1 charge, Slow for 2 charge, and Teleport for 3. And then same thing, it regains 1d4 +4 expended charges daily at dawn. And then same kind of ish thing. If you cast a spell from the hand, it casts the suggestion spell on you. It is a DC 18, demanding that you commit some kind of an evil act of some kind. And then again, the specific act can be left up to the mind of the DM at that point.
Cheat on your taxes.
Very much so, right? All right, so then finally, if you have both the hand and the eye, you get a bunch of other added properties. So you are now immune to disease and poison. The eye's X-ray vision never causes you to suffer exhaustion. You experience premonitions of danger unless you are incapacitated and you can't be surprised. If you start your turn with at least 1 hit point, you regain 1d10 hit points. So you start being able to regenerate, basically.
Buck regeneration on players.
Yeah. So this is the fun part, though. If a creature has a skeleton, which sure, most do, you can attempt to turn the bones into jelly by touching them with the hand. So basically you do so by using an action to make a melee attack against a creature that you can reach, obviously. And then on a hit, the target, it's a DC 18 con save or drop to 0 hit points.
Just right to 0.
Yeah, so it's basically like Finger of Death, like eat it, you know?
And that's high 18 con save.
Yeah. So, and you can also use 1 action to cast Wish. This property, doing this, you can't do it again for another 30 days. So it's like once you can cast Wish.
Still. Oh.
Yeah. It's quite a lot. And then on top of that, you get 1 minor benefit, 1 major benefit, and 1 minor detrimental property. So let's have some fun here.
I do like fun.
Let me find my table here.
I'm trying to find fun in all this right now.
I've got it right in front of me, Megan. Do you want to just read off the rolls?
Sure. Let's do that. So I don't have to keep flipping pages on my digital books here. I rolled a 90 for a minor beneficial.
You get to learn 1 3rd level spell once per dawn.
Once per dawn, you get to...
You don't learn. You can cast 1.
You can cast
3rd level
1, okay.
spell that the DM chooses.
Great. Okay. Phenomenal. It's going to be more death. All right. 1 major benefit, 25.
While attuned to the artifact, you regain 1d6 hit points. Fuck this regen at the start of your turn if you have at least 1 hit point.
Ah, so good. All right. And then I believe it was 1 minor detrimental. Yep. 5.
While attuned to the artifact, you have disadvantage on saving throws against spells.
Okay.
And
You're
we said
powerful
minor.
enough. Go ahead. Yeah.
Fuck. All right. How do you destroy it?
It has to be destroyed by the sword of cast.
Right. That's
Yep.
the only way, hey?
That's the only way. Yeah.
Fun.
Yeah. Again, if you don't destroy it with the sword of cast, then, or either of them, you have to, I think you actually have to be wearing both. So if the Eye of Vecna and the Hand of Vecna have to both be attuned to the same person who is then killed by Cass's sword, the sword of cast. So it's not like you can just stab the hand with I feel like you could, in my mind, if someone stabbed the hand while it was not attached to somebody, but again, that it technically it's not rules as written how it works. Rules as written is hand and eye have to be in place attuned to a human, kill the human wearing it.
Okay.
So this could be a sacrificial NPC lamb situation if you wanted it to be. Or you're a beloved PC too.
This is what we keep Dan's character around for.
We definitely keep Dan's character for this reason.
Total
Can you put this
sidebar,
on you?
He did just lose his hand in game.
It's true. Didn't he have the Hand of Vecna at one point?
Previous campaign, Locky.
Got you. Yeah. I was like, I remember. I know it's not his current character, but I remember that happening at some point.
No, he got it and he gave it to Acra. He also, and Acra already had the eye. Guess what, Megan? Did you forget?
I'm so excited now. My excitement for our campaign just skyrocketed by 700%. There she goes, everybody. But yeah, that's the Eye and Hand of Vecna.
Let me talk about another thing that popped up in our campaign, although I called it the Necronomicon at the time, because I didn't want to tip off the fact that we were playing with the Book of Vile Darkness. This is a book that requires attunement, but if you're not evil, then you need to succeed on a DC 17 Charisma save or have your alignment permanently turned to neutral evil. After you've attuned to it and then studied it for an additional 80 hours, you can start to gain its benefits and even change it if you'd like. If 80 feels weird, remember, you're supposed to have an 8-hour adventuring day, 8 hours is a long rest, and then there's another free 8 hours where you just do downtime. And a week in D&D is 10 days. So that's where 80 comes from. Once you understand the book, you gain a physical manifestation of evil as your body warps to the powers that you can't truly comprehend, like you grow a third eye, or horns, or a tail, or cloven feet, or fangs, or something. You have to commit an evil act within 10 days, or the book disappears. Also, if you willingly do good, it disappears. And if you die while you are attuned to it, your soul gets imprisoned by an evil god, and you can't be resurrected until your soul is freed. This book holds evils too powerful for any mortal to comprehend, and it can turn anyone to madness just by reading it. Some people say, and then the DMG just assumes and it just goes off on this fucking tangent, that Vecna wrote the book and filled it with evil, horror, and blackest magics. Others have held the book before and is written all over with annotations and notes all through what's left of it. Because you see, some pages are missing or damaged, and others are covered in scratches, blood, and ink from a long history of conflict and violence. Animals run from it, plants wither and die in its presence, and even rock will turn to dust if the book rests on it for too long. So it corrupts and destroys everything it touches. So what do you get out of it? A fuck ton. You learn the true names of many powerful fiends. You raise one ability score by 2 and lower one by 2 to a minimum of 3. You'll notice there's no maximum, so you can go above 20 this way. You get advantage on persuasion when you're dealing with evil characters, and advantage on intimidation when you're dealing with non-evil characters. Once per day, you can cast Dominate Monster on an evil creature. You double your proficiency bonus when you use intelligence to learn evil lore from the book. You can recite words in dark speech. This is one of the only places we ever hear about dark speech in 5th ed. Dark speech is the evil, evil, evil language that just like nobody knows, and you're going to understand why. If you recite words, you take 1d12 psychic damage, and every non-evil creature within 15 feet of you takes 3d6 psychic damage. So even just hearing the words will kill you eventually. Also, you learn how to become a lich or a death knight. You can learn all sorts of evil spells at the DM's discretion, even new spells. And you get a fuck ton of this random table bullshit that we're dealing with. First of all, 3 minor beneficial properties. I rolled a 1. While attuned to the artifact, you gain proficiency in 1 skill of the DM's choice. 47. While attuned to the artifact, you have resistance against 1 damage type of the DM's choice. I mean, necrotic, right? And 24. While attuned to the artifact, you're immune to disease. That makes sense for this. You get one major benefit. 71 is while attuned to the artifact, you can use an action to cast 1/6 level spell chosen by the DM. After you cast a spell, roll a d6 on a 1 to 5. You can't do it again until the next dawn. You get 3 minor detriments. Fuck, there's a lot going on in this. See, this is my problem with artifacts. Right before I roll these, you have to hand these out to your players. This would include 3 pages of notes.
Yeah, this is like a novella of how to use this one little item you now received. Yeah.
This is why you want to give it late in the campaign.
Mm-hmm.
The first one is 45. While attuned to the artifact, your weight increases by 1d4 times 10 pounds. 73 gets us, while you're attuned to the artifact, other creatures can't take short or long rests while within 300 feet of you. Fuck you, party. 66. While attuned to the artifact, non-magical flames are extinguished within 30 feet of you. And then 2 major detrimental properties. 58, which is when you become attuned to the artifact, you gain a form of long-term madness, which we've talked about in previous episodes.
Mm-hmm.
And 22, which is creatures with a challenge rating of 0, as well as plants that aren't creatures, drop to 0 hit points when within 10 feet of the artifact.
Oh boy.
That is the Book of Vile Darkness.
I'm so glad that one of our legacy characters in our campaign has this.
Right? Isn't it fun?
How do you destroy it, Adam?
Well, you destroy it by not just ripping out pages, because there are pages that are torn out. However, these pages, the lore that's written on them, will just manifest again in the book, or there will be a person that is attuned to it that will just become possessed and rewrite this lore into it. So that doesn't work. What you can do is get a solar angel to tear the book in 2. And then the book is destroyed for 1d100 years, after which it reforms somewhere in the multiverse. So
that's where you roll a 2. Oh, 2 years. Okay.
If you want it to be more like permanent than that, the creature attuned to the book for 100 years can then discover the phrase hidden in the original text. And if you then translate it into Celestial and speak it out loud, then both the speaker of the word and the book itself will just disappear in a flash of bright light. However, if evil still exists somewhere in the multiverse, the book reforms in 1d10 times 100 years. Only if all evil in the multiverse is destroyed will it turn to dust and never come back.
Which will never happen because we're always going to have player characters.
The rogue and the warlock will always exist, so here we go.
So the one that I have, and this makes me quite happy, and Megan, I'm sure you'd get the connotations on this. I got the Orb of Dragon Kind, and it also can be called the Dragon Orbs, which sounds an awfully lot like something else that's I could go into, but I'm not going to go into.
Kicked him
Is
right in
Adam's
the
here?
dragon orbs.
Not quite what I'm thinking, but okay, sure. But these things essentially are from the world of Kryn, and this came from a time when elves and humans were waging war against dragons. And so a bunch of wizards came together and made 5 orbs to try and increase their magical power to take out these dragons, to lure them in and destroy them. Now, as time went by, these orbs were scattered and into high towers, and over time they fell down. Some were destroyed, and 3 were thought to may have survived. And so now people have been looking for them. The thing is, though, each of these orbs holds, I guess you could say, the spirit or the essence of an evil dragon. And I'll tell you right now, it does not want to be contained. So if you're trying to use this Orb of Dragonkind or this Dragon Orb, you better have the right personality to do it, essentially. You want to have the right stats to get above it. Because if you try to attune to this orb, what happens is as soon as you do it, and you have to speak the command word. So you have to know the command word. Not only can you have it and attune to it, you need to know what the command word is. So there's a quest right there. But if you speak it, then you have to make a charisma DC 15 charisma check. On a success, you remain attuned to it. However, if you fail that charisma check, you become charmed by the orb as long as you remain attuned to it. Now, as long as you are attuned to it and you failed, it is going to continually cast suggestion on you. The DC is 18, by the way, if you want to try and go against that. And it is guiding you to what it wants. And more than likely, it is trying to get out of the orb, this dragon spirit that's inside it. But it might also might want to do things for annihilation of particular people, or essentially this is an evil dragon spreading suffering across the world. Imagine if you have a black dragon in this thing, or just to advance worship of Tachesis. Is that how you say it?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
the version of Tiamat.
Yeah, it's Tiamat on Kryn. Or, as a DM, be creative. Have fun with it. But if you do wind up becoming attuned to this thing, you have 7 charges of spells that you can use. And you can regain some of them on a rest, depending on a D4 plus 3. But you can use, with a spell save DC of 18, you're able to use Cure Wounds. You have 3 versions of the 5th level charge of this. You have 1 charge of Daylight, you have Death Ward, and you have Scrying. So some fun spells to play with while you got this. Not so much battle heavy, but some fun spells. Here's an interesting thing, though. You have the ability to call dragons telepathically. Any specifically evil dragons that are within 40 miles of you. Now, this just means that they feel compelled to come to you. This doesn't mean that they're doing it of their own free will, nor do they want to come to you. So essentially, if they do come to you, they could very well be hostile towards you. It doesn't say that you're being protected. In fact, they could be downright angry that you've summoned them, and they might just kill you for. So good job, guys. Yeah, you go ahead and use this. But
like, thanks for the summons. Now die.
Exactly. And if you survive using this, if you survive it, you can't use it again until another hour. So you can use it only once per hour. So, hey, you got 1 friendly evil dragon. You want to try your luck against another one? Go ahead. Make my day. Yes. So I find it very interesting. I'm sorry, Megan. It's not like the Dragon Balls that we're used to from Dragon Ball Z. I'm sorry.
Not quite the same. No.
No, not quite. And Shenron is a neutral dragon at best, not really evil.
No,
but
neutral.
Yeah, exactly. But on top of all this, you also have the random properties that we have been talking about, and I'm going to roll. Give me a moment here. So you
Sure.
get.
You roll. I'll read them out loud.
Okay, you got it. Okay, so it gets 2 minor beneficial properties. So for the first one, we have a 60.
While attuned to the artifact, you can use an action to cast 1 cantrip.
Okay, yeah, you get a cantrip. Okay. 29.
While attuned to the artifact, you are immune to disease.
Okay, because we definitely use that enough. Next one is 1 minor detrimental property. Yeah, you only get 2 minor beneficial, 1 detrimental. You're looking at 60.
While attuned to the artifact, your weight drops by 1d4 times 5 pounds. I rolled it goes up by 1d4 times 10. You rolled it goes down by 1d4 times 5.
Okay, interesting. And the last one is 1 major detrimental property. These are the fun ones. You're looking at 21.
Creatures with the challenge rating of 0, we got this already, as well as plants that aren't creatures, drop to 0 hit points when within 10 feet of the artifact.
Interesting.
This really does feel like it's a green dragon orb.
Yeah, it really does. Based on, again, I love that for the flavors you can use with those random properties. You can get the flavors.
Depending on what dragon you decide.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Now, to destroy this orb, it is impervious to most attacks, including breath weapons. So it's not like other dragons can just use their breath weapons on it to destroy it. No, the only ways that it can be destroyed is either by a disintegrate spell, or using a +3 magical weapon.
You know why +3 specifically?
I'm trying to think, because it's so rare.
Yeah, because +4 and +5 and above does not exist in 5th edition. +3
Yeah.
is the biggest
+3 is like
number
the
you get.
rarest.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is the dragon ball. I mean dragon orb. Yes.
Love it. All right, my next one and final one is the Sword of Cass, which again, fucking love it. Touched on him slightly when talking about the
Yeah,
Vecna's.
I bet you did.
I did. I wish. Anyways, we talked about the Sword of Cass a little bit when talking about Vecna's Eye in Hand, since it is technically the only weapon that can destroy those artifacts. This was a gift given to Cass by Vecna, which was eventually used in the own demise of Vecna himself. The sword itself is a +3 sentient longsword that crits on a 19 and 20, as well as adds 2d10 slashing damage to any undead. However, if the sword is not bathed in blood within 1 minute of being drawn, the wielder must make a DC 15 charisma save or be dominated by the sword
Calm down.
to spill blood by any means necessary.
You sort of
Still calm down. Yeah,
If you do make a save, it is a humble 3d6 psychic damage. Some fun things about it is that it does add 10 to your initiative. Also, when you use an attack action, you can add some of your modifier to add to your AC for the remainder of that round instead of using it for your attack action. It can also cast spells like Lightning, Divine Word, and Finger of Death. This is a chaotic evil sentient sword. It has an intelligence of 15, a wisdom of 13, and a charisma of 16 with dark vision up to 120 feet. Its personality is that it just wants to bring death to Vecna and all things Vecna related. In fact, its fixation on finding the eye and hand of Vecna will become a priority eventually to the wielder, and it also hates any of Vecna's acolytes or anyone that follows Vecna. The sword will be like, I'm gonna kill that guy. So just be ready for that if you happen to be wielding this beautiful blade. To rid of the sword and or destroy it, you must have both the Eye of Vecna and the Hand of Vecna be attuned to it and use the Wish spell, which I mentioned before you can only use once a month, and you basically wish to unmake the sword. So I like that that's just a nice little end of the battle campaign of the hand and the eye, and the sword has to be within 30 feet. So it's going to be a dance on the battlefield to see who gets to hoops first, basically is what's going to happen, I feel.
Yeah,
That's one way to do it.
All right. Along with that, it does get 1 minor benefit, 1 major benefit, 1 minor deficit, and 1 major deficit. So let's roll for the 1 minor.
Hey, let's just for the episode, we don't need to roll for them. We've listed off like
a million of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, you get 1 minor, 1 major benefit, and 1 minor and 1 major detriment. So big old sword. It's your +3, so it's your biggest one. Congratulations. Cass has the biggest sword.
Good job.
and he will dominate you, and then if you don't do what he says, you'll take a little bit of psychic damage as he
Well,
whispers.
just
in
a
your
little
ear.
humble psychic damage. It's fine.
Yeah.
Just a little. Just a little.
You've been very bad. So but Megan went on mute and nearly fell under the desk. All right, so Book of Exalted Deeds is my next one. This is just diametrically opposed to the Book of Vile Darkness. And it's exactly what you think it is. It requires attunement by a creature with good alignment. This book is famous. It is out there doing good for everybody, and it's prominent in a lot of different religions throughout D&D. It gives you moral guidance, it helps solve evils, and it gives you all sorts of hints on how to move forward and benefit specifically those with pure hearts and firm purpose. I said purpose, everybody calm down. So it looks like a golden book with a heavy clasp that looks like angel wings. Only a creature of good alignment that is attuned to it can release the clasp. Otherwise, it's just shut. Again, once it's opened and you've attuned, you've got to spend 80 hours reading and studying the book. It's the same as the Vile Darkness. Any evil creature that tries to read from the book takes 24d6 radiant damage and ignores resistance and immunities. A creature that's reduced to 0 hit points by this damage disappears in a flash of light and is completely destroyed, leaving its possessions behind. So, smoking boots and nobody left. There are some benefits, but they only last as long as you strive to do good. If you fail to perform at least 1 act of kindness or generosity within 10 days, then you lose all benefits granted by the book. But it doesn't disappear like the Book of Vile Darkness. You could just try again. Your wisdom score increases by 2 up to a maximum of 24. And any spell slot that you expend to cast a cleric or paladin spell counts as a spell slot of 1 level higher. So if you cast, trying to think, Spiritual Guardians, I don't know if that one levels. Trying to think which, Guiding Bolt, it will cast a level higher, right? Also, once you've read the book, you are surrounded by a protective halo, which sheds bright light in a 10-foot radius and dim light beyond that for another 10 feet. You can dismiss or manifest this halo as a bonus action. It gives you advantage on persuasion checks when dealing with good creatures and intimidation checks when dealing with evil creatures. In addition, any sort of undead or fiends that are within that bright light roll with disadvantage when attacking you. The only other information that we have is that this book cannot be destroyed as long as there's good in the multiverse. Same deal, but, the other way around. However,
Easier to destroy.
and I'm going to read this
You
word
play
for
characters,
word.
it's easy to destroy.
Drowning the book in the river Styx removes all writing and imagery from its pages and renders the book powerless for 1d100 years. So I really want to just have a little vial of like the river Styx, waters from the river Styx, to give to my players so that they can just wipe a book clean at some point. I don't see what this wouldn't work on the Book of Vile Darkness or anything else, right? Like,
Yeah, that's pretty
really
cool. I like that.
Yeah.
A little caveat.
Sorry, the last two things are 2 minor beneficial properties and 2 major beneficial properties. No detriment.
Whoa,
If you're attuned to this, it feels good.
you want to keep it.
Tyler, what's your last one?
Love it. My last one here is one that's called the Axe of Dwarvish Lords. A prince who wanted to make an axe decided to go as deep as he could, got the god of dwarven creation to help him using 4 legendary tools to make this axe. And it is a powerful axe. He used it to bring peace to his lands, and it was passed down for generations until dark times came and the axe got lost. Essentially, people looked for it, and there's a reason why people were after it, because it is dang powerful. It was made by this prince and by the god. Essentially, it acts as a +3 magical weapon. I'm
sensing a theme here. If you've got an artifact, it's a +3. You're not getting a whole lot of +1 artifacts.
No. However, it also acts as a belt of dwarven kind, which is a fun. I like using that in my campaigns.
Yeah.
As well as a dwarven thrower and a sword of sharpness. So it has all 3 of those tied into this. It also has something called the Blessings of Moradin, and this is if you are a dwarf. It specifically says that if you are a dwarf.
Sorry, it's Moradin.
Sorry, Moradin. My apologies.
As someone who looks like a dwarf, I know these things.
Got it. The
These are my
Blessings
people.
of got it. Blessings of Moradin.
No, Moradin.
This is sounding like an undead episode.
This sounds like me editing an undead episode.
So if you are a dwarf, you have immunity to poison damage. Also, the range of your dark vision goes up to 60 feet instead of 30 feet. And you gain proficiency with artisan's tools related to blacksmithing, brewing, and stonemasonry. Not just one, all 3. You gain the ability to conjure an earth elemental, which, hey, who doesn't like a good earth elemental on their side? But one that's interesting is you also gain the ability to teleport from when you're underground. As soon as you touch it to the ground, you know your intended destination, and there's no chance of mishap happening as you're traveling using this teleport spell between these 2 points underground. Now, you can only use it once every 3 days, but that's still quite useful. Now, remember at the beginning of this episode, I mentioned something about I have a cursed item. This is the cursed item. It even has the tag cursed. Because if you try and attune to this item and you are not a dwarf, what happens is over a period of 7 days, you gain the physical appearances of a dwarf. Even if you unattune to it, the curse remains. It does not go away. You have to use Greater Restoration or remove curse to get rid of this effect. So if you're not a dwarf and you want to become one, go ahead. But if you don't want to become one, don't attune to it. To destroy this thing, it needs to be destroyed in the same forge that it was wielded in, which is called the Earthheart Forge. Again, there's a lot of lore on the back of this weapon, so have a look at it if you're interested. It has to be destroyed in the same forge. I'm getting Lord of the Rings vibes here,
Yeah,
too.
it's like from the hellfires it was birthed from, it must be destroyed. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's exactly what I'm thinking. Now, as for the random properties, it has 2 minor beneficial properties, 1 major beneficial property, and 2 minor detrimental properties. So, hey, the good outweighs the bad.
Unless you're not a dwarf.
Hey, you want to become one? Here you go.
Yeah, there you go.
So yeah, that's this wonderful axe in a nutshell.
That's pretty cool.
Well, we've exhausted the examples of artifacts from the DMG, so let's investigate a brief info break.
If you've been inspired by the conversation in this episode, please feel free to reach out and share your creativity and ideas with us and the rest of the community. You can reach us on Facebook and Instagram, or on our subreddit r/itsamimic. Also, if you're feeling particularly generous, please follow and subscribe and leave us positive reviews, likes and comments. Engagement like that help us pop up on search engines and keep this show running.
So do you guys have any final thoughts and inspirations in regards to any of the items that we've talked about, or just the types of items we've talked about?
Let's roll initiative one final time.
Okay.
12.
17.
I've rolled a lot of 12s today. It's the 12 dice.
4.
All right, so I guess my final thought with my 17 is really just reiterating the fact that these are all fun items, but if you're going to put more than one of these into a campaign, you need to stop and think. And a
What a tracking nightmare.
Yeah,
Oh,
right.
gosh.
Like whether it is a cursed item or a sentient item or an artifact, you can overload your campaign pretty quickly. I was fortunate enough to be playing with experienced players in a tier 4 campaign, and that is when I started to drop artifacts on us.
Mm-hmm.
This was not something that I was willing to do before level 15.
Yeah. My final thoughts here, kind of how we iterated earlier, is along the lines of I use these kinds of items as storyline drivers and adding a little bit more depth to my characters to interact with, right? Especially if you're operating in like dungeon crawls where your characters are really only interacting with themselves and not NPCs, or you have a world where NPCs aren't really, a big thing that you develop as a DM. Using sentient items and artifacts is a good way to introduce NPCs without having to build fully fleshed out characters walking around with the risk of them dying. But again, to Adam's warning, don't go too overboard because it can get overwhelming in the same way that having too many NPCs at a table can get overwhelming. So balance is key.
Agreed. Last thing I would say is, if you are giving out these items, don't be afraid to homebrew some stuff in there. Don't be afraid to make it your own. Maybe give it that cursed take and make it a very minor curse. It might be a sentient item or an artifact. Add some flavor in there. Don't be afraid to be creative, because we want to make it fun for the players. We want them to enjoy their time, but also be perplexed and question and be willing to investigate.
Yeah. We talked a lot about a lot of items of darkness and dreary and sadness, but it's just a little sword that makes you have allergies for 24 hours. You just happen to sneeze all the time, which breaks your concentration here and there. You know what I mean? Like, have some fun with it if you want to.
Yeah, have fun.
But that is how you declare a duel in the Feywild, Megan.
I knew it.
Excellent.
I'm just prepared, Adam.
We're having fun. Exactly.
All right. Anyway, that's all for this last part of our discussion on magic items in D&D 5th edition. Please take a second to engage with a like, follow, comment, and review to help push our engagement. And don't forget to subscribe to find future inspirations for your campaigns.
If you'd like to support us, we have a store with some merch and a donate button on our website, itsamimic.com. And of course, we have our Patreon. This episode and others can also be found on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and most other podcast apps. Thanks for listening to It's a Mimic, where you never know what you're gonna get.
This has been an It's a Mimic production. Please check the show notes for this episode to see links, time codes, and credits, and don't forget to reach out and share your own inspirations.
I love love the energy. I'm pretty wired for my last conversation, so I got some energy for you, my guy.
I usually perk up, by the end of the intro, but I'm oh man, it was just a long ass day today.
Yeah. Sorry I bothered you with needing passwords.
You know
How
what?
very dare you?
I've got to fix that authentication thing so that people can just rock and roll.
I think it's a Google thing. I don't think you can get away with it, unfortunately.
We have 2 Zoom accounts. Mine,
Yeah.
the one that I'm on right now, and then the one that you're on right now. The one that you're on right now requires authentication.
Mm,
What I'm on right now doesn't, but I forgot the password.
got you.
So here we are.
Mhm.
Anyway, yeah, by the time I remember, I never think about it. So
Fair enough.
it's too late by then. Anyway, who's cold opening this?
I'm
Hi.
cold opening this
Oh, open us coldly, Megan.
with like the depths of the blackness that is my heart. I would love to.
Sent shivers down my spine.
Well done, Adam. You know how I know you're tired? You fucked up your outro.
Honestly, I think I say it in my sleep. Like it is so ingrained in my brain right now. I am fucking white. This is wild.
You poor sleepy child.
My poor sleepy me.
Poor Mieka.
She's fine.
Yeah, she's fine.
Megan, 2 back to back. You've been recording for over 5 hours now.
I've been recording since 5 o'clock. Yeah.
Jeez. Ooh.
Yeah.
I think I said this. Casey broke the record the other day, or she tied the record with me. 4 recordings in a single day.
Atta girl.
Oh.
And I think the only people that have done 3 are Dan, Terry, Megan, and Dave did 3 one time in the Eberron series.
Yeah. Three is my max before I want to not do life anymore.
Yeah.
So.
So
Yeah, I think in the L5 arm we did 3 once. And then for Giants, Casey and I have done 3 before.
I remember that one because you were drinking the whole time.
We were hammered by episode 3. You're welcome, internet, for that little tidbit.
I am at this point. I am excited for Giant season 3.
Yeah, it's gonna be a good time. We're gonna switch to hard bar.
Oh dear.
Shots.
I guess it's Fireball for Fire Giants.
We should do that. Yeah, and then we can do like
Smirnoff Ice for
I
Frost.
was gonna say Smirnoff Ice for Frost Giants. Can do some. It'll probably be like tequila or something for Hill Giants. Trash.
Just smoke pot for your stoned Giants.
Yeah. We'll do a couple edibles. It'll be great.
Just put the edibles in the drink.
Tyler, you can edit these ones. I'm fucking out. I don't
You're welcome.
Okay, see you next time.